When we think about the machines that shaped American agriculture, the tractors that stood shoulder to shoulder with the men and women who worked the land, a few names rise above the rest. For more than a century, J.I. Case built tractors that weren't just tools, but trusted partners in the field. Today, we'll look back at 5 of those legends, 5 Case tractors that earned their place in history because they never let farmers down. From the dusty fields of the 1940s to the big-acre operations of the modern Midwest, these tractors carried families through good years and bad, becoming part of the story of rural America. Let's begin where it all started, with a workhorse from the 1930s that became a lifeline for countless families. Case Model DC. The DC first rolled off the line back in 1939, just as the country was climbing out of the Great Depression and staring down the uncertainties of World War II. For so many families across the Midwest and the Great Plains, this machine became more than just a piece of equipment. It became a partner in survival. Farmers needed a tractor they could count on through long days, changing seasons, and unpredictable times, and Case answered that call. The Model DC was built with a powerful 4-cylinder engine that gave it the muscle to handle heavy field work. Rated at around 30 drawbar horsepower, it might not sound like much today, but back then, it was the difference between struggling to get the plow through tough ground and finishing the job before sundown. This tractor could pull 2, sometimes 3 bottoms with ease, cutting through the rich black soil of Iowa or the stubborn clay in Kansas. What made the DC so special wasn't just its horsepower, though. It was the way it was engineered, rugged, straightforward, easy to maintain. You didn't need a team of mechanics or expensive parts. With a few tools, some grease, and a little know-how, a farmer could keep the DC running season after season. That practicality built trust. Folks knew that when they walked out to the shed in the morning and turned that flywheel, the DC would come to life, ready for another day's work. The design itself carried a certain character. The long, lean frame and high ground clearance gave it a proud stance in the field. Early versions came on steel wheels before rubber tires became common, and for many older farmers, the sight of those steel-lugged DCs clattering across the field is a memory etched deep in the mind. Later versions with rubber tires made the ride a little smoother, but the heart of the tractor never changed. And perhaps most importantly, the Case DC was affordable. At a time when money was scarce, when families were patching clothes and stretching every dollar, this tractor offered real value. It allowed small and mid-sized farms to modernize, to put more acres under cultivation, and to increase yields without going under financially. In many ways, the DC helped keep family farms alive during one of the toughest stretches of the 20th century. For those who grew up on a farm in the 1940s or 50s, memories of the DC run deep. You might remember the smell of gasoline and oil on a cool morning, the sound of that engine rumbling steady as you worked row after row, or the way your father or grandfather gripped the steering wheel with withered hands. For some families, the DC wasn't just a tractor, it was a member of the family. It was there when sons came home from the war and took their place in the fields. It was there when crops failed and when bumper harvests filled the bins. Even today, at tractor shows and county fairs, you'll see collectors and old-timers gathering around a well-worn DC, swapping stories about the work it did and the lives it touched. Some of those machines, more than 70 years old now, still fire up with a little coaxing, proof of the remarkable durability built into every nut and bolt. The Case Model DC wasn't the flashiest tractor, and it wasn't the most powerful. But it was steady, reliable, honest. It delivered exactly what farmers needed, year after year. And that's why it has earned its place as one of the true legends of American agriculture. And while the DC handled the big fields, Case knew families needed something smaller, lighter, and more approachable. That brings us to the next legend, the little giant that stole America's heart. Case VAC. At first glance, the VAC didn't look as imposing as its bigger brothers. It was smaller, lighter, and simpler. But that was exactly the point. Introduced in 1942, right in the heart of World War II, the VAC quickly became one of the most beloved tractors Case ever built. It was designed for the small to mid-sized farms that dotted the countryside from Ohio to Nebraska, farms that couldn't justify the size or expense of a heavy-duty tractor, but still needed dependable power to get the work done. Under the hood, the VAC carried a 4-cylinder engine that delivered around 18 to 20 drawbar horsepower. Now, that might not sound like much today, but in its time, it was plenty for the jobs most families needed: plowing gardens, cultivating rows of corn, pulling a mower through hayfields, or running the belt on a threshing machine. For many farmers, the VAC became the tractor they used day in and day out, the machine they trusted for nearly every task around the place. What set the VAC apart was how approachable it was. It wasn't intimidating to operate, even for younger family members just learning their way around machinery. The steering was manageable, the controls were simple, and the compact frame made it nimble in tight spots where a larger tractor would struggle. In many ways, it was the tractor that taught a whole generation how to farm. And let's not forget the economics. Priced affordably, the VAC gave farmers a chance to step into mechanization without breaking the bank. Remember, these were the years when the nation was rationing materials, when every penny had to stretch. A tractor that was tough, versatile, and easy to repair was more than just helpful, it was a lifeline. With basic tools and a little common sense, a farmer could keep the VAC running strong. Its simplicity was its strength. There's also a certain charm to the VAC's appearance. The upright exhaust, the narrow front end, the clean lines, it had a kind of understated elegance. And when you fired it up, that steady 4-cylinder beat had a rhythm all its own, a sound that, for many farm families, became the soundtrack of their summers. But the real story of the VAC is in the memories. Ask anyone who grew up on a farm in the 40s or 50s, and chances are they've got a tale about one. Maybe it was the first tractor they ever drove, perched on the seat while their dad walked beside them, teaching them how to line up the rows. Maybe it was the machine that carried their family through tough harvests, when every bale of hay mattered. Or maybe it was simply the tractor that was always there, steady, reliable, and ready to work whenever it was called upon. Even now, you'll find restored VACs at shows across the country, their orange paint shining like new, drawing smiles from old-timers who can't help but remember the days when those little tractors were the backbone of their farms. They may not have been the biggest or the strongest, but they were the tractors that made farming possible for thousands of American families during a time when the country needed it most. The Case VAC was proof that sometimes, smaller really is better. It was practical, it was dependable, and it carried with it a sense of trust that has lasted for generations. That's why, even today, it holds a place in the hearts of those who knew it best, and why it rightfully stands as one of the legendary Case tractors that never let you down. But as farms grew in size during the 1960s, farmers needed more power, more comfort, and more vision. And Case answered with a machine that literally lifted farmers above the competition. Case 930 Comfort King. By the time the 1960s rolled around, American farming was changing fast. Fields were getting bigger, farms were becoming more specialized, and the demand for stronger, more comfortable machines was at an all-time high. That's when Case stepped forward with a tractor that would not only meet those demands but set a new standard in design and performance. I'm talking about the Case 930 Comfort King. The Comfort King line first appeared in the early 1960s, and it immediately turned heads. Farmers were used to sitting low on the frame of a tractor, often staring past the hood just to see the work in front of them. But the 930 Comfort King changed that forever. Case engineers raised the operator platform, giving the farmer a clear, commanding view over the hood and across the field. It may not sound revolutionary today, but back then, it was a game changer. Suddenly, you didn't feel like you were buried in the machine, you felt like you were in control of it. Underneath that elevated platform was a powerhouse. The 930 was equipped with a 6-cylinder diesel engine, delivering more than 80 drawbar horsepower. That meant it could handle larger implements, more acres, and tougher conditions than many of its competitors. And thanks to the reliability of that case-built engine, farmers could put in long, grueling hours without worrying about whether the tractor would hold up. Time and again, the 930 proved itself as a machine that simply got the job done. But it wasn't just about raw power. The Comfort King lived up to its name in other ways, too. The elevated seat, improved ergonomics, and better visibility made long days in the field just a little more bearable. For farmers used to dust in their face and sore backs from poor seating positions, this tractor felt like a glimpse into the future of comfort and productivity. The 930 also carried with it a certain sense of pride. Painted in that bold case orange and white, with its tall stance and unmistakable silhouette, it looked every bit as tough as it was. Many folks still remember the feeling of climbing up onto that platform, settling into the seat, and looking out over acres of farmland, ready to tackle the day's work. It gave the operator a sense of authority, like you were the captain of your own ship, steering through seas of corn and wheat. For farmers in the Midwest and the Great Plains, the 930 became more than just a tool, it became a symbol of progress. It represented a time when agriculture was stepping boldly into the modern era, when horsepower and innovation were driving yields higher and making large-scale farming possible. And yet, for all its modern features, the Comfort King never lost touch with the values that made case tractors beloved in the first place. It was still rugged, still reliable, still simple enough that a farmer with a good set of wrenches could keep it running strong year after year. Today, when you see a Case 930 Comfort King at a show or still working in the field, it brings back memories of a pivotal era in American farming. For many, it was the tractor that carried their family operation into the modern age. It was the machine that let them farm more land, grow more crops, and face the future with confidence. The Case 930 Comfort King wasn't just another tractor, it was a bold step forward. A blend of strength, comfort, and vision that has cemented its place as one of the most legendary machines in the Case lineup. A tractor that, true to its name, made kings out of the men and women who worked the land. And yet, the future still called for more. By the 1970s, horsepower was king, and farms demanded even greater strength. Case responded with a tractor that lived up to its royal name, the mighty 1070 Agri King. Case 1070 Agri King. By the 1970s, farming in America was bigger, faster, and more competitive than ever before. Farmers were working more acres, pulling heavier implements, and pushing their equipment harder than the generations before them. Case knew they needed a machine that could rise to the challenge, a tractor that combined raw muscle with modern convenience. That's when the Case 1070 Agri King came onto the scene, and for many, it became the crown jewel of the decade. The Agri King series carried with it more than just a name, it carried an attitude. The 1070 stood tall, dressed in that distinctive white and orange paint, announcing to the world that this wasn't just another tractor. It was bold, it was modern, and it was built for farmers who wanted more than good enough. At the heart of the 1070 was Case's 451 cubic inch diesel engine, delivering close to 150 horsepower. For the time, that was serious pulling power. It meant the 1070 could hook up to large plows, heavy discs, and planters designed for big acre operations. And it didn't shy away from long, punishing hours in the field. That engine had a reputation for durability. Farmers learned they could push it hard, day after day, season after season, and it would keep coming back for more. But the 1070 wasn't just about brute force. One of its most celebrated features was the power shift transmission. With just a flick of the lever, an operator could shift through gears smoothly, without grinding or hesitation. It sounds simple today, but back then, it was a revelation. The power shift saved time, reduced fatigue, and gave farmers the confidence to take on tough jobs without worrying about gear changes slowing them down. Comfort was another step forward with the Agri King. The operator's station was designed with visibility and ease of use in mind. The elevated platform, roomy seat, and improved controls made those long days a little less taxing. Farmers who spent 10, 12, even 14 hours in the cab appreciated the thought that Case engineers put into the design. It wasn't luxury, but it was a big step toward the operator-focused tractors we know today. And let's not forget the pride that came with owning a 1070. This was a machine that made a statement. When neighbors saw it pulling into the field, they knew you were serious about your work. Many farmers still recall the way it felt to sit in that seat, watching the wide implement stretch behind them, feeling the steady hum of the engine as it powered through the soil. It was confidence you could touch. Of course, the 1070 was also a symbol of an important time in agriculture. The 1970s were a decade of expansion. Farms were growing, technology was advancing, and the world was hungry for American grain. The Case 1070 Agri King was right there in the middle of it all, helping farmers rise to meet the demands of the era. Even today, collectors and old-timers speak of the 1070 with a kind of reverence. It wasn't just another tool in the shed, it was the tractor that got them through tough years, that turned endless acres into harvests that fed families and communities. For many, it remains a favorite, a reminder of when they were young, strong, and full of ambition, with the 1070 Agri King at their side. The Case 1070 proved that strength and innovation could go hand in hand. It wasn't perfect, but it was dependable, powerful, and ahead of its time. And that's why it holds its rightful place among the legends, an Agri King that truly lived up to its name. But the biggest leap was still to come. In the late 1980s, Case joined forces with International Harvester to create a tractor that would define modern farming for decades. Case IH Magnum 7140. By the late 1980s, farming had once again entered a new era. The struggles of the farm crisis were still fresh, technology was advancing at a breakneck pace, and efficiency wasn't just a goal anymore, it was a necessity. Farmers needed tractors that were bigger, tougher, and smarter than anything that had come before. Out of that moment came one of the most celebrated machines in modern agricultural history, the Case IH Magnum 7140. The Magnum line was born from the merger of two giants, Case and International Harvester. It was a union that raised eyebrows at the time, but when the first Magnums hit the fields in 1987, those doubts quickly turned to respect. The 7140 stood out as a flagship of the new era, combining Case's reputation for strength with IH's deep roots in tractor innovation. Under the hood, the 7140 packed the legendary Cummins LT810 engine, a turbocharged six-cylinder power plant that delivered right around 190 horsepower. That engine quickly earned a reputation for being nearly indestructible. Farmers would tell you the Magnum could run all day, pull the heaviest implements, and come back the next morning ready to do it again. It was the kind of reliability you could build a farm operation around, and many did. The power shift transmission carried over and was refined, giving operators smooth, dependable control in the field. Whether you were chiseling through heavy ground, planting with precision, or hauling loads down the road, the 7140 shifted effortlessly to meet the task at hand. The cab, too, represented a leap forward. Roomy, quiet, with climate control and ergonomic controls, this was comfort farmers of the 1940s could have only dreamed of. For the men and women spending countless hours in the seat, the difference was night and day. But what truly cemented the Magnum's reputation was its balance of power, durability, and simplicity. It wasn't overloaded with electronics or finicky systems. It was straightforward, tough, and easy to maintain, the same qualities farmers had always respected in a tractor. And yet, it was modern enough to lead agriculture into the 1990s and beyond. Recognition came quickly. In 1989, the Magnum line was awarded Tractor of the Year, and farmers across America nodded in agreement. Here was a machine that wasn't just hype, it delivered. Many 7140s from that era are still running today, with thousands upon thousands of hours on the clock, proving the truth behind the Case IH slogan, "These tractors were built to last." Ask a farmer who owned a Magnum 7140 what it meant to them, and you'll hear stories of long harvest nights, of watching the lights cut across a dark field as the machine pulled steadily forward. You'll hear about reliability that never wavered, even when the weather and the markets did. For many, the 7140 wasn't just another tractor, it was the backbone of their operation, the machine that helped them survive tough years and thrive in good ones. Today, the 7140 holds a special place in tractor history. It represents a bridge between the old and the new, between the mechanical grid of the past and the technological promise of the future. It's remembered not only as one of Case IH's greatest achievements, but as one of the finest tractors of its generation. The Case IH Magnum 7140 was, and still is, a legend. A tractor that never let you down, and one that continues to remind us why Case's heritage runs so deep in the heart of American agriculture. From the DC that carried families through war and depression, to the little VAC that worked its way into our hearts. From the proud stance of the 930 Comfort King to the power and innovation of the 1070 Agri King, and finally, the indestructible Magnum 7140 that defined a generation. These tractors are more than machines. They are legends. They remind us of a time when hard work, trust, and perseverance were the heart of every farm. They remind us of fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, working side by side, with a Case tractor by their side. And that's why these 5JI Case tractors remain unforgettable, because they never let farmers down. Which one of these Case legends means the most to you? Do you have memories of riding, driving, or even restoring one of these machines? Share your story in the comments, I'd love to hear it. And if you enjoyed this journey through tractor history, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell so you won't miss the next story from America's farming past.